This is presentation by Group 2 on solid waste. My name is NicholasAganyanya, and I will be exploring issues on e-waste, also known as waste electrical and electronic equipment in the city of Delhi, India. Application of technology in every sphere of society has driven the increasing demand for electronic devices, and in its wake, an equivalent amount of waste. Talk of law of demand and supply. A joint study by the Indian Chambers of Commerce and KPMG in 2016 ranked India among the world's top 5 e-waste generators. E-waste is very complex in nature and comprises of broken and obsolete electronic devices, which are rich sources of gold, silver, and copper. Delhi is the second largest e-waste producing city in India. Unfortunately, it lacks the skills and legislation required to safely manage the industry. This presentation is based on a case study by Kishore in 2010, which brought to fore the severe health concerns of the workers in the industries, numbering about 25,000, including women and children. Looking at Delhi's e-waste burden timeline, back in 2000, India was experiencing rapid economic growth, and the increasing demand for Indian domestic consumables worldwide peaked at 53% in sales. And in 2002, a report revealed that the USA was already dumping their e-waste in India and other Asian countries. In 2003, approximately 1.3 million personal computers were being made obsolete annually in India alone. In 2005, e-waste was quantified at 145,000 tons. 2 years later, in 2007, it was quantified at 380,000 tons. And 7 years later, in 2014, it stood at 1.8 million tons. The graph right there is just a plot of the figures pitting the actual e-waste generated against the projected e-waste generated. Your guess is as good as mine. It was definitely a wow moment when the actual e-waste generation way surpassed what was projected. This video right here is very disturbing. It's actually an account taken of the everyday activities of the industry in Delhi, where the motherboards are being burnt on open flames at the rooftops, and the plastics and others are being dumped in fields and set ablaze in fields where children play and people interact. It just displays an holistic implication of the e-waste issues in the city of Delhi, and classifying them according to the hazards as either human, health, occupational, and environmental. The table right there classifies the various e-waste sources and their constituents and their matching health effects. Now, as you can see, e-waste is rich in components like lead, cadmium, mercury, chromium, brominated flame retardants, nickel, lithium, and beryllium. Now, these components, as you can see, they also have a variety of health effects. And looking at the industry and professional and unregulated as it is, all these components are put together, they're broken apart together, they're bound together, and in so doing, the health effects is just a concoction of health effects being released to the environment and to the community at large. Unfortunately, there is no official reporting or data available on the direct health burden of the US situation in India, despite there being reports of attempts by the government at legislations and policies um, in trying to curb this prevalent informal industry. An investigation by Basel Action Network was done on the US e-waste dumping in China, and it was used in this presentation to actually paint a true picture of the e-waste health implication in Delhi. The situations were all the same because with this China, it was the other country besides India where America was dumping its e-waste, and it is a perfect comparison to reveal that which is yet to be reported or brought to the public domain of the underlying disaster in Delhi. That there is the link to that documented video of the dumping in China that is used in the comparison for this study. The human health and occupational hazards in Delhi through this activity is not limited to toxic lead and tin fumes, toxin dioxins and furan inhalation, carcinogenic hydrocarbons, toxic brominated flame retardants, and other hydrocarbons, silicosis, irritants, as well as acid burns and toxic fumes from chlorine and sulfur dioxide gases. The environmental health hazards are not limited to lead and barium leachate, lead and lead contamination of the land, air and water, contamination of the food supply, air quality, particulate deposits covering the environment, dioxins and blatant environmental degradation, as well as the river ecosystem. E-waste management in India is disturbing. Unlike in developed countries, e-waste management is not a well-established formal industry and government waste stream in India. Despite media attention and government legislations, the issue is still getting worse. These facilities require significant investment, including advanced technologies and processes such as wastewater management and exhaust waste gas treatment systems, which are lacking in India. Instead, the industry in Delhi thrives more as an informal sector and regulated from households and reliant on an unskilled and uninformed workforce. Right there is an environmental health hazard pathway. At the top, the main activity is waste management, and the main media of exposure is through physical and chemical media. And the environmental concentration is all over the place in air, water, soil, and food. The exposure is all around: dermal air exposure, inhalation contact on skin, lungs, and breast milk, and the main human activity generating all this and increasing is both international and local dumping, and the main is the actual unsafe handling of e-waste in informal and residential settings. The health effects are rampant: skin irritation, brain development, endocrine system disruption, among others, even mortality. E-waste management initiatives are very ineffective in India, despite the Rio Declaration polluter pay principle. The government in India, national and state, should enact laws targeting e-waste pollution violations in clear, structured, and effective ways, including penalties, such as fines and jail time and environmental cleanup. Um, Environmental health impact assessments as well and should be embraced by the industry such that the producers are potentially responsible for the final disposal of the e-waste and such be applied at the planning stage of product development. The government as well on its part should foster departmental partnerships and policies with schools, trade and businesses to drive e-waste management education awareness. The challenges are Herculean, with only 1% of the Indian waste being recycled through the formal establishments, whereas the rest are being handled in the runaway informal sector, which are actually exempted from existing e-waste rules. Besides, there are no effective measures in place to curb international dumping of the e-waste, as the polluter pays principle is not binding. Besides, exports are legal and well within the confines of international business law, despite the glaring deficits in ethics. The consumers as well, the rule should focus consumers because they have not the knowledge of the e-waste hazards and so will not even bother to recycle their products through the small sector. Conclusion: e-waste is upon management is upon everyone. Awareness, educational legislation, and a champion such as a leadership role or government department should drive the movement. The government as well should boost the e-waste recycling units to effectively handle the elephant in the room. This statement was made by one of the investigative reporters who were doing the report on the USA dumping of e-waste in China. And she said, the unregulated brute market forces dictate that toxic waste will always run downhill on an economic hill of least resistance, sending the toxic effluent of the affluent to flood towards the poorest of the countries where poverty is ravaging, labor is cheap, and the occupation and environmental protection are inadequate. Thank you for your time.